Found two random pedalo boats or something that's been sunk down there.
I can see it.
Hi, this week I'm in Croatia and I've been exploring the seaside a little, looking for good places to take some images, some underwater photography. It looks fantastic, actually. It looks really great down there. So what we're going to do later this evening, we're going to go down to the water, we're going to find a good spot to take some pictures, and we're going to do it. Right, so I'm just going to show you what I've got that I'm taking the images under the water with. I've got a fairly basic setup with me here in Croatia because I only had hand luggage, so I couldn't bring everything. But what I did bring with me was I've got my Aquatech camera housing, which is it's got the lens port for the 16 to 35 2.8, which is what I've got on the this camera at the moment that I'm taking this video with. I'm using this with the Sony A7Riii. The other thing I've got, just a little DJI Osmo Action, which I'm using on this homegrown idea that I've got, which with my mask and snorkel here, I've attached it. Let's see if I can show you. I've attached an end, as you can see that, on the end of my snorkel, so that when I'm in the water I can attach my little Osmo Action Cam to the bottom of my snorkel so it sits down here, and then I can get a shot of the main camera, the A7Riii, and you can see what I'm doing. If I have it on top of the mask, which is one way to do it, or well, anywhere else basically, it's either going to be out of the water or it's not going to show the back of the Aquatech for you. So that's why I put it down there. I think it's going to work. Got to get the angle right, but I've got my hopes up for this one. The other thing that I bought with me is some fins, and these are really little. Look how little they are, mini fins. But the reason I bought such small fins is because, as I said, I've only got hand luggage, so had to buy. I've got the smallest fins I can do, but they're going to do the trick. Smallest fins I can do, the smallest fins that I can fit into the bag that I've got, that I brought with me. So that's what we're using. It should be fun, should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Forgot to mention, just one more thing I forgot to mention, I've also got the zoom gear for the 16 to 35 mil that I'll be using under the water. The other thing that I brought, I've also forgotten to bring, to tell you, I brought a smaller lens port which fits the 24 mil 1.4, that's right, which I'll be using if I take some shots in the evening. See how we go with that. Sometimes it's just easier just to stick with one lens port. It's a bit of a faff to change everything over, so we'll see how we go. I'm going to stick with this lens port for now. Maybe we'll use the other lens port. Should be good. Alright, let's go. Let's go. I'm at this gorgeous beach in Croatia, which is about 50 miles, 50 kilometers north of Dubrovnik. We're about to go for a swim, in this gorgeous water. It looks absolutely stunning, and I can't wait to get in there. If I can, I take time to put my gear together in a dry and sand-free place, connecting and testing before I get into the water. This inevitably means that those around me have to wait while I fiddle with my camera housing, which is something I've just got used to. I'm not sure about everyone else, but to those who've ever had to wait for me, I apologise.
Yeah, okay. Right, in she goes. I already know. There we go. Ready, and Ready to go!
Before I enter the water, I do one last check to make sure all the settings are correct. I take a few test shots to make sure it's working, then carefully submerge while I'm still in shallow water, taking careful note of any potential water that might be entering. It was early evening on this swim. Getting the strong side light in the water with floating articulate helped highlight the shafts of light. I always try to isolate my subjects from others. Having more than one subject in the frame can get cluttered very quickly. Simplicity is key. A lot of these moments are over very quickly. As still images, to me, they convey a sense of serenity and peace. But in reality, the pace is pretty frenetic. This is why I advocate taking loads of images on every swim. The water wasn't as clear as I had initially thought. There was a great deal of articulate floating around, which did help to isolate the subject in the deep water, although the further away from me my subject was, the more it had the effect of adding a Hessian filter, which I then had to pull back in post-processing. In this case, most of the photographs I ended up using were of my son. He's used to me photographing him, both above and below the water, and happily spins, turns and floats around me while I photograph, giving me a range of poses. It does help to have a willing subject.
Okay, so that did feel like a good first session with the underwater camera housing. Got a few good shots of Luca, I think. Got a bit of stuff on the lens, never mind. Didn't last very long, probably not long enough. And the camera started to buffer. That was a bit of an issue. I had to stop taking pictures because I was taking too many. I need faster SD cards.
Okay, so we've had the first session in under the water. It went pretty well. It was really nice. One thing I've discovered about where we're staying along the Croatian coastline here is that it gets really deep really quickly here in the Adriatic. So basically within a metre of the shoreline it drops off to very deep, which is not a bad thing I suppose, but it we haven't seen much fish life. The water's been quite nice, quite clear. There's not much sand, no sandy beaches yet that we've seen. But it means that some of the subjects are a little bit hesitant. But it's been fun, it's been good. We're going to try and find some more spots to go to. Perhaps some more. We've found a sandy beach on the map that we're going to give a go to a little bit later. Perhaps tomorrow. We'll see how we go with that. It's also super hot. I've come from England where it's really cold, but super hot. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. Unless I'm in a pool, I always use a wrist strap. Even in calm water, you never know when you're going to get distracted and find your camera housing floating away from you. On this second dive in a cove in Dubrovnik, there was a misty, hazy layer in the water, perhaps oil or pollutant, or perhaps where fresh water was meeting salt water. I'm not sure, but it made some of my shots unusable because of a very pronounced shimmer interrupting the subject. I decided to scrap many of the images I took on this day for this reason. Some of my group decided to jump off a rock into the sea, and obviously for this shot I made sure to have a fast shutter speed to capture the moment they hit the water or emerge from the bubbles. The idea with these shots is to capture the action and frenetic pace rather than the serenity implied by the previous day's images.
found two random pedalo boats or something that's been sunk down there.
I can see it. Up there.
They're too deep, and I hurt my ears diving yesterday.
On this last swim, the sun was low on the horizon, and I shot towards the light, which reflected the particulate in the water between the subject and the lens. This is known as backscatter, and is often viewed as a flaw to be avoided. While sometimes it really does get in the way of a good photograph, in others, such as here, to me, it's an advantage. To me, it adds to the ethereal or otherworldly quality of the subject and the image. My aim is not just to accurately portray a subject. Rather, it is to convey feeling, emotion, and a sense of meaning adjacent to the lived reality. Dramatic lighting and employing the technical flaws, if you want to call them that, of the image are ways of conveying those ideas. We just did a nice dive under the water. Well, it wasn't really a dive. The interesting thing about here in the Adriatic is that it's really quite salty, and we found that we weren't being able to sink very well below the water. We had to really struggle to dive, to do a duck dive, even just to go under the water a little bit. We were struggling. I don't know whether that's something about this particular inlet or where we are, but it felt that it must have been quite salty, because otherwise we would have been good to have some weights. But anyway, we didn't have weights. We got some shots. The water it looked quite clear on the surface. It looks very clear blue, looks gorgeous. When we got in there, it probably wasn't quite as clear, didn't have quite the same clarity as it kind of promised on the surface. But it nevertheless had a kind of a nice, almost misty quality. I'm not quite sure the right word, but it helped to isolate the people that I was photographing, which included my son and some friends that we're here in Croatia with. So let's see how they turn out. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, you'll know exactly how they turned out. So fantastic day here in Croatia, taking some photos, and yeah. What's next? Got back to London, realised I hadn't done much of an outro, so end of the video, here's my conclusion. A few things that I've learned on my trip to Croatia. 1, I've written them down, so I'm just going to check my notes. Water looking clear from the surface doesn't necessarily translate to water being clear under the surface. That little particulate, or whatever it's called, can impact your photography, not necessarily in a bad way, sometimes in a good way, but it's something to be aware of. And something I really felt when I was in the Adriatic in Croatia. Number 2, it's the first time that I've encountered this oil residue or pollutant, or maybe it was where fresh water was meeting salt water or a different temperature of water. I'm not sure what it was. I need to do some more investigation, but it led to this shimmer that led to me having to dump some of my photos. And I might do a longer video on this if people are interested. So put some comments in the comment section. If that's something you're interested in, I'll do a longer video. Living my advice to take loads of shots when you're under the water caught up with me. My camera started to buffer, and I know that's because I have SD cards that are not as fast as they could be. They're still good SD cards, but I saved a few pennies there, and that caught up with me because my camera started to buffer on that first dive that I took. So that's something I took away. And also there's so much more underwater exploring that I want to do. So that's something that I guess I haven't learned on this trip. I already knew that. So if you've gained something from this video, I hope you have. Please give it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to my channel, and we'll do it all again. Cheers. See you next time.